Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The final tune-up before we go qualifying, and by the time this weekend is done, the field will be set for the 109th Indianapolis 500-mile race. And it is indeed a pleasure to welcome home a member of the family and, more importantly, a really good friend, a four-time starter of this great race. Zach Veach, welcome back to the IMS Radio Network.
It's great to be back. Thank you, Mark. I've really missed this place. I've missed getting to work with you guys. I know we've had a lot of fun over the years, so to be back on such an important weekend, I couldn't have a better seat in the house.
Well, as a four-time starter, I think your insight is going to be tremendous for us and for our fans. So give us an idea of what this checklist is like for these drivers as they prepare for this final 2-hour practice session.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is sometimes you'll see some of the guys not actually going out this morning. The name of the game is you want to keep the cars cool for qualifying, because anything you can do to get out there for that one attempt to really put it in, especially if you got an early draw, is important. But it depends on how you're feeling with your race car. You know, we had a couple of people like Kiffin Simpson. He had his big moment yesterday. It sounds like he's going to a backup car. So for him, it's just going out here, making sure the car feels the same. Hopefully it's in a good spot before you really have to go and hang it all out here. 2
points that Zach made we will discuss further, and we'll do that by bringing in two of our outstanding pit reporters. We'll first welcome in Drake York with conditions.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks to our friends at Firestone Racing, of course, the official tire of the NTT IndyCar Series. We'll take a look at our conditions here for this 8:30 practice session. Ambient temperature 64 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 degrees Celsius. The track a little bit cooler than it was, 130 degrees yesterday. To start off the day, 73 degrees Fahrenheit, but with the length of this speedway, you can imagine it varies just a little bit in every section of the racetrack. That's 23 degrees Celsius in this 8:30 practice before our Indy 500 qualifying.
In his second year with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network, to update us on the situation involving Kiffin Simpson after that crash yesterday, we say good morning to Rich Nye.
Good morning, Mark. So the 8 car is sitting on pit road, but it has already been out on the track and run one installation lap. Now, this is a backup car, but this is a car that ran in the open test and ran pretty well for Chip Ganassi Racing in the open test in April. So this car does have laps on the oval. It has been quick, and they hope it will be quick for Kiffin Simpson today. Of course, we had that big moment about 12:50 on Friday. Coming out of turn 4, he spun and made hard left side contact with the safer barrier in turn 4. The number 8 car getting perpendicular up in the air, coming down on its left side, then coming back on its wheels before hitting the inside pit wall as well. Kiffin Simpson is just fine. He's in the car, ready to get this backup number 8 ready for qualifying today. He's third out in qualifying at 11 a.m.
A good look at the iconic windsock that is high atop the scoring pylon. And Zach, you and I were talking before we went on the air about under the slightest of wind, this place can be challenging. What challenges are going to be posed today by a gusty wind?
Yeah, of all days to have strong wind conditions, qualifying is not the day you want to have it, just because these things are trimmed out. You have the least amount of downforce that you've had all weekend to really go for it. So anything above, 5-mile-an-hour wind, you really feel it in these things. Today we have the wind blowing strong across the front straightaway, so it's going to be a bit of a tailwind coming out of turn 1 and really blowing the side of the car on the exit of turn 2. So as a driver, you're constantly looking at the windsocks around this place, especially today. And I think one thing we're going to expect to see is once we get into qualifying, if the wind conditions stay the same, we're going to see a lot of close calls on the exit of 2 of just these cars kind of losing the front end, pushing up the racetrack. It's going to be tight trying to get onto the back straightaway.
Alexander Rossi, Marcus Ericsson among those turning fast laps early. Rossi at 231.974. Marcus Ericsson with a lap of 231.919. You heard Rich talk about essentially that install lap for Kiffin Simpson. Ryan Hunter-Ray has been out and turned a courtesy lap around 207 miles per hour. So, Zach, you referenced these cars are really trimmed out. At this time of year, a lot of novices listening to the IMS Radio Network. When you describe a car as trimmed out, what does that mean to the guys?
Yeah, for us, so, downforce is the name of the game. So with these wings on the car, the higher wing angle, basically the opposite of an airplane wing. So as you're going through the air, it's pushing these race cars into the track. So the more downforce you have, the more grip that you have. But the downside of that, there's a give and take for everything. The more downforce you have, more grip, but it's more drag, so we're slower in a straight line. So as today, it's all about one thing, speed. So we're trying to trim these cars out, we say. We take the downforce away. So we're trying to do the least amount of downforce before the car is almost uncontrollable to get around this place for 4 laps. So as a driver, it's the most stressful 4 laps of your year, because every time you turn the wheel here in qualifying, you just got that bit of uneasy feeling because you don't know if the car's going to quite stick the way that you want it to.
Graham Rahal trying to do something he has not done over the past couple of days and find speed. He's up to 2:14.633. Same for David Malukas. We can tell you that yesterday was an interesting day. For those of you that couldn't join us or may not have been here, it was hot, it was sticky, it was windy, muggy, and because of that, quite frankly, the laps were limited. I think the day before Thursday, we turned over 2,200 laps through the entirety of the field. And yesterday, I think close to 600 laps were turned, and that is all, which is not a lot among a 34-car field over the span of 6 hours of practice time. And what it boiled down to more than anything else, Zach, was risk versus reward. When you run on a day which you know the conditions are going to be vastly different for qualifying.
Yeah, well, that was something we were talking about a little bit earlier. Is, you know, some of these peak gusts of the wind that we're expecting today is, you know, above 20 miles an hour at times. If this was a Tuesday and we're having the same wind conditions, I bet you'd see a lot of teams just sitting it out, waiting for the wind to kind of die down. But you don't have that luxury today. Today is all about trying to read the conditions, going out and give it the best attempt that you can. And I think that's why we see more cars than normal running this warm-up, because yesterday weren't great conditions. It was very hot, so I don't think a lot of guys got that answer or that question answered like they wanted to know truly what they have before they go to qualify today. So this morning probably is going to be that last-minute Q-sim for the guys that didn't get a run that they quite liked yesterday.
Alexander Rossi parks into the pit box, and yesterday he turned a lap at 229.632 as his fastest. And the conditions allowing his speed to improve at 231.974. Erickson again at 231.919. Malukas at 231.915. A little bit of speed for Graham Rahal at 228.753. Kiffin Simpson, as we mentioned, a courtesy install lap, and the same for Ryan Hunter-Reay. So late in the day, there were teams, obviously, with an eye on the sky. And as you well know, teams oftentimes have a direct link to a meteorologist, and we'll talk more about how the conditions changed yesterday and what that meant for a handful of drivers, especially Ganassi drivers, after we hear from Takuma Sato.
Yeah, catching up with Takuma Sato as he's walking down towards the RL pit box, and just going to try to squeeze in a word here with Takuma. We'll see if we can grab him here in a second, Mark. Obviously a busy man this morning. We're going to try to walk and talk with him, but obviously important business to tend to at the moment, so we're trying to grab him here in a second.
So, Zach, conditions changed. Cloud cover the last 90 minutes of the day here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and notable drivers like Scott Dixon, Alex Below, Kyle Kirkwood, Colton Herta from those two teams went out late and found some speed.
Yeah, well, it's all about that. You're trying to look for that lucky cloud cover, because the one thing you'll hear us talking about all day today is the track temp. So obviously the surface of the track's very dark. We get the sun high in the sky. All that heat, all that energy bakes into the track surface and makes our track temperature get higher and higher. These tires, they have a sweet spot. You don't want that track temp to be really, you know, above 100 degrees. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case today. That's why it's so important to get that early qualifying draw, which we can talk about in a little bit.
Owner-driver Ed Carpenter is with Rich Nye.
And he's had that role for several years now here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Ed down here in the Alexander Rossi pit. Ed, what are you trying to accomplish this morning? What are you looking for this morning? And what do you have for qualifying today?
I feel pretty good about our speed. So, you know, it's always nerve-wracking watching and seeing what everyone else, you know, comes up with and does overnight. But I feel like we're in the mix to make it into the top 12. You know, that's all contingent upon us going out and executing and really nailing the balance. It's definitely tricky this year. I think you're going to see a little more volatility in the four-lap runs for a lot of cars. But I was happy yesterday. That's why we're not practicing now. My team, Alex kind of had some bad luck yesterday. Didn't really get clean runs. And Christian's changing the configuration a little bit, so they just wanted to get a balance read this morning. But I think the team's in a good spot.
You have always been a part of that run for the pole on Sunday. Your team has been very strong in Indianapolis 500 qualifying. Can you get all three cars in that top 12 today?
That's certainly the goal. You know, that's our expectation is to be up there fighting for it. you know, there's still a lot of unknowns of everyone fully laying their cards on the table. But I feel like we have a great chance, so we'll see.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Java House Splenda comes on board in new ownership group involved with Ed Carpenter Racing, a total rebranding of that team, and a driver lineup that now includes Alexander Rossi.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've always been a Java House fan, so it's cool to see them get involved in motorsports because, you know, I've seen them kind of just grow and start to pop up here and there around the states. And to see them, you know, take a part of what's such a big part of Indiana, tradition, and it's always great to see new people at the racetrack.
Let's hear from Jacob Abel, rookie trying to start his first Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, he is in that second group of practice here on Saturday morning. Jacob, it's a dream for any driver to get a chance to compete in the Indy 500. Does it still feel a little surreal that you're going to attempt to qualify today?
It feels pretty real today. You know, the nerves are definitely there now. You know, it's a pretty intense day. I think you ask every driver in the field, they'll say the same thing. But, yeah, feeling good about it. Just going to go and get kind of a baseline check here this morning, see what the wind shift does, because it's going to be a pretty big deal today, that wind. So, yeah, just get a little feel for it, and, yeah, I think we'll be good. We have a good race car. Just got to, you know, keep sticking with it.
The best of my knowledge, the wind is obviously going to stay the same, but the temperature, that's going to be the real thing today. So what can you learn from this practice session with the cooler conditions this morning?
Yeah, you know, the cooler conditions only really makes it better, right? So, yeah, I think the balance will stay the same.
We got trouble on the track.
That's right. The 66 machine has found contact with the outside retaining wall, and that was a big, big, big hit, Zach Veach.
Oh, man, that's the last thing you want to have happen today because it puts you on such a back burner for tomorrow, obviously. I mean, your one job as a driver, they always pound it in your head that you got to deliver the car to your first qualifying attempt. What happens after that is racing, but this is a big setback for those guys.
And Marcus Armstrong really was in the midst of, I think, a pretty serviceable weekend. I mean, some of the practice sessions, he had been a little frustrated, but I think by and large that team as a whole was pretty happy with how things have gone. And matter of fact, he was 9th fastest on the speed chart in the combined results of the session, and that was a big, big hit.
Well, that's the tough thing about it is you get that good read yesterday and you're happy with the car. You don't want to take it out there and risk it again.
Right.
You know, that's one thing that's always, for us, it's very difficult to get past because when you're going for that top 12, especially that fast 6, every time that car leaves pit lane, it's at risk because you're at such a fine line of, you know, between control and utter chaos that any little thing can really push you over. And unfortunately, we see that happening to Marcus here. Hopefully we can get a replay and kind of see exactly what happened. But that car is far from salvageable. I mean, that's probably going to be a backup car coming out of the trailer, and crew's having a very, very stressful day trying to get it ready to be back in line by 4 or 5 o'clock.
Pretty decent debris field is laid down, and it looked like the contact, Zach, was right about the apex just past that of turn number 1, and the AMR IndyCar safety crew is out there right now taking a look to see how that safer barrier held up.
See, the tough thing about that, it kind of goes back to the wind we were talking about. So the wind is, you know, blowing from across the track perfectly from the front straightaway to the back. So the grandstand obviously wraps around turn 1, but there's a big hole there. And that wind hits you right when you get to the middle of turn 1. So with the wind hitting you in the back of the car, a tailwind, it always feels like the back of the car kind of lifts up and gets light. And that's what it looks like it happened to Marcus. He kind of got into the corner, and he lost it right there at the middle, and part of that might just be the wind that we have.
That car kept spinning through the short chute in the south end, and it has come to rest essentially between the racetrack and the pit exit lane right at about the start of the turn 2 suites, and the AMR IndyCar safety crew continuing to attempt to extricate Armstrong from that car. The greatest day in motorsports is almost here. Join our Nick Yeoman and Brad Gilley from the Performance Racing Network for a preview of the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. Listen Sunday, May 25th at 10 a.m. Eastern and get ready for a full day of racing. It is the greatest day in motorsports. Just 9 cars had turned laps, and Armstrong was still getting up to speed. He had turned a lap at 218.094 miles per hour. Scott Dixon had just gone out onto the racetrack and turned a courtesy lap in the neighborhood of 140 miles per hour. David Malukas has gone to the top of timing and scoring at 232.037. 231.974 for Alexander Rossi. Marcus Ericsson at 231.919. Kiffin Simpson at 230.979. Nolan Siegel at 230.568 miles per hour. Ryan Hunter-Ray at 229.924. Graham Rahal at 228.753. Zach Veach, you've got the replay.
Yeah, we're seeing it now. It just looks, I mean, he wasn't below the white line, so it's not like he got in too low, but that's such a big impact. It looks like he just lost the car. You see him, his hands, he's got really bright white gloves. He was just trying to catch it. He caught it once, and that's the tough thing about Indy. It's like once you get that big snap going, it's hard to get the car back under control, especially with just so little downforce. That car, I mean, it's definitely in bad shape, which is unfortunate because you hate it for him because it's such a bad spot to be in. And as a driver, you feel as if, it's the worst day of your life because sometimes it's so easy to get away from you that there wasn't much you could do in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, the car swapped ends on him and made hard contact after it spun around with the side of that car.
Yeah, it looks like they're, taking some time, checking on him in the car. We'll hopefully have some more on that there.
Yeah, there is, again, a whole stable that the AMR IndyCar safety crew and track safety workers that are working to extricate him from that car, and it looks like they have finally done that. We do see some movement, and I think as a precaution, he is walking a very short distance, but the good news is he is walking to the gurney that they're going to place him on, and then he'll be off to the infield care center. But it's good news that at least from our perspective, Zach, he does appear to be awake and somewhat alert.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a pretty big hit. I think, obviously Kiffin's incident yesterday getting in the air was a bit scarier, but just looking at the impact, I mean, the G's on that one are definitely going to want to be looked at because it was such a violent rearward in hit on the exit of turn one. And it's just, that's where it happens, isn't it, Mark? We've seen so many people, for me, I've been in the wall of the exit of one from the same thing. You get in with this low downforce, you lose the rear a little bit, and before you know it, you're got your hands across your chest trying to get the air back in your lungs.
Well, the good news is he is now setting up on the gurney as they're wheeling him to the ambulance, rubbing his hand over the top of his head, and so he's awake and alert, and he is communicating with the AMR safety crew, and he's waving to the fans in the suites in turn two. So that's certainly good news, and there's no better place for Marcus Armstrong to be evaluated and looked at. You can tell he got his bell rung a little bit, Zach. That I'm sure that's sadly that's a familiar feeling for a driver.
Well,
driver recognizes
that's the thing I can see. He keeps closing his eyes. He's kind of got his hand on his head, and it's that sense of a little bit of disorientation of just trying to understand what just happened because you feel terrible. You just rode off a car that somebody's been working on your whole team for the last 6 months to get it ready for this race. But two, I mean, when you hit the wall here, you hit it hard. I mean, you're going.
They're not soft walls; they're safer barriers. There's a difference, right?
Yeah, they'll absolutely. We got, I think.
Yep. Let's hear from Mike Shank.
Yeah, Mike Shank standing on the 66 timing stand. That was a nasty hit, but it was good to see Marcus waving to the crowd. You're on the stand. Was there anything that you deduced that caused that crash for Marcus there?
Yeah, we didn't see anything in the data that showed something bad was happening, though, so we'll have to go back and look at it. We're happy that he appears to be okay. We got to see what the evaluation is, and we got to see if he's okay, then what's next? Can we fix the car, get another car out, another tub out? Or what? We just unknowns right now, but we're gonna get back out there if at all possible.
How stressful is this for you guys? I mean, obviously you got two other cars in the field to worry about, but now you have this massive crash on the first day of qualifying, and just kind of tell us the stress levels that you're going through as one of the team owners.
It's stress level 11. It's off the charts. So let's just get Felix and Elio around this warm-up, and then we'll see where we're at.
All right, thank you, Mike. Good to see Mike Shank. Obviously good to really see Marcus Armstrong pop up out of that race car, and he's headed down to the infield care center.
And I've got to say hats off to Mike Shank because A lot of people in that similar situation would have waved Drake off, but I think he understands the conduit that we are to the fans, and it's good to get that owner's perspective. And without seeing Mike Shank, we can sense the frustration in his voice. But first and foremost, he's happy his driver appears to be okay.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, anyone that's done this long enough, you know there's going to be days like this, unfortunately, and there's going to be days that are as expensive as, a crash at Indianapolis. But I've always had so much respect for Mike Shank, a fellow Ohioan. He grew up in, his shop's just a couple of hours from where I did. So I hope them the best. Hopefully they can get that backup car out, but it's definitely going to be a lot of work to get that thing running again.
David Malukas, before this halt to the proceedings, had turned a lap at 232.037 miles per hour.
Yeah, David Malukas, as you said, Mark, currently the fastest, and we've talked with a couple guys already. Obviously, conditions are going to be a little bit different, but we just saw Armstrong go around. I'm not sure if you got a chance to see a replay, but as somebody who was out there with the same exact conditions, was that maybe him just getting loose because of handling, or was that maybe with wind or something else that had to do with it?
I mean, the wind gusts are just now starting to pick up. We wanted to try to go as early as possible, especially with later today. The wind gusts are going to be more. It could have been a wind gust, but honestly, looking at it, it seemed like he was pretty still early in his run. I think it's probably just a little bit of setup there. Maybe their trim angle was a bit different. But, yeah, I mean, conditions it's definitely tough. But, I mean, with these low temperatures, it was definitely easier than yesterday.
When we come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for this qualifying weekend in particular, we talk about, these guys are on the edge of disaster with trim and all that stuff. But I'm curious to know, with the hybrid, you got over 100 extra pounds in the rear end of the race car plus the wind. Are you guys all the way trimmed out, or is there still some room to trim out on the number 4 so far?
Well, we're pretty much, we're kind of matched it out to this temperature. I mean, later today we might need to go up depending on how things are, but yeah, I mean, with the hybrid, it definitely makes things more difficult. Adding that weight to the rear, I mean, it's very sensitive. So you're getting a lot of these moments that you never really had before. So the car is more uncomfortable when you're out there. But, yeah, definitely a high-pressure day for all the drivers.
High-pressure day. I think that's the best way to put it. Thank you, David. He's currently your fastest here in this first group of practice here early Saturday morning.
Good stuff. Good insight.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're talking a little bit about the weight there, because with this hybrid system, it added, about 100 pounds to the rear of the car. You got to think of that it's not in the wrong place, but it's not necessarily where you want it. With that weight behind you, when you get these moments, it's just like a much longer lever. So as that rear starts to pivot, it's just got another 100 pounds of momentum behind it. So it makes the car a little harder to catch. If it gets out of control, a much bigger slide, it's a lot harder to kind of get back under you. So it's tough for these guys because you got to be right there, but the littlest thing puts you over. And man, you were talking a couple of degrees that you can save these cars before it's out of your hands.
Lots of fluid laid down as a result of that crash, and so that means a lengthy cleanup with 7 minutes remaining in the first half of the session. And I will say that your body language and your response to the replay of that incident was much different than the first one that you ever saw when we were doing an Indy Next race together in Toronto, and you saw R.C. Enerson almost flip into Nick Yeoman's basket in turn 3. That's the first time I think you had ever seen that.
Yeah, it was. Well, with that one, I remember, I was still an Indy Next driver at the time. So to me, I was very familiar with the cars, and that was probably the biggest crash I've ever seen in an Indy Next race. So we were really happy RC was okay. But the look on my face from that's coming from someone who's experienced, a back end, hitting the wall backwards at 220 miles an hour. It's just, it's never a good feeling. And you sympathize. We were joking about this, Gabby Chavez and a couple others. When we were younger, you would see, events like this happen at the racetrack to competitors and things, and you really didn't think much of it. You were young and you were all trying to fight to get to that IndyCar level. You get a little older, you get a little wiser, and it's more you sympathize with everyone.
Yeah.
Because we've all been there. We know that how quickly a good day can turn into a bad day. And honestly, you just want everyone to go out there and just have a good day, because it's so hard to do in this series that everyone is so competitive in.
Well, we on this side of it marvel at the recuperative powers, but more than anything else, the question for us is always, after a hit like that, how does Marcus Armstrong get back into the race car? And I have just put it as simply as this. if there is any reluctance to do it, if there's any hesitancy to do it, then you're not a race car driver.
Well, luckily we all have very, we don't have good short-term memories. It seems, we can blank out these moments like this because you always have a way to justify it. Oh well, I got loose. That was that. That's why that happened. So there's always a direct cause and effect that we can rationalize very easily. But the thing is, you love the sport. You're going to have moments where you're in the wall. It's like a football player being tackled. Every now and then you're going to get a really good one where you're on the field for a little longer than you wanted to be. But you just have a process you go through, and the teams are really good at it too. I mean, unfortunately, you don't want to be going through this today of all days, but the team, you get back out there, they're going to put the car underneath you that's very secure. So if you were, as we talked earlier, trimmed out, they were obviously very trimmed out when this moment happened. When he comes back out, he's going to have a little more downforce than he did. They're going to make the car feel good for him, so probably a second attempt is going to be back to where he was.
In terms of being able to move forward, this is one of those situations. I saw it a couple of weeks ago up close and personal. I'll tell you what, we'll talk more about that and getting that car put back together and how their technical alliance will help them after we hear from Tony Kanaan.
Yes, Tony Kanaan, he's been a driver this month of May, but more importantly, the team principal at Arrow McLaren. I think the big question today, and a lot of things people are going to be looking at, is Kyle Larson. He hasn't really done a full quali sim, even if you go back to the April test. So what's the level of the concern on the 17 box today?
I don't think there is any. The car's pretty good. I mean, I did my refreshment on it. We know what to do. I mean, it was in the point yesterday. Conditions were not great. Obviously, we had a little bit of a hiccup, but no, we're not concerned at all. We're just going to do a run this morning, make him comfortable. If there's anybody that can wheel a race car, it's Kyle, so there is zero concerns on that.
Another thing I've noticed walking down here up on pit lane, Brian Barnhart and Christian Lundgaard standing on the timing stand. Christian, not in a driver's suit, he doesn't appear to be making a run. I'm not sure if you had any involvement in that call, but do you know why they're choosing not to make a run this morning?
They felt comfortable. I mean, Pato and Christian decided not to run. The other two decided to run. I always give my input, but they are pretty capable of deciding what to do. I think Christian's happy, Pato was happy, Nolan wanted to do a run just to make sure everything was okay. So does Kyle, and we split the difference.
I can't help but look down at your hand and see that ring from 2013. It's got to feel really special. I mean, obviously you got 4 really good chances this month of May, but it's got to feel really good to look down at that beautiful ring and say, hey, I won the Indianapolis 500 and here's the proof.
I mean, for sure. I mean, this is something that I will never forget. It's been part of my life since 2013, and now I put the pressure on my drivers to get me another one because I can get one myself. But, yeah, it feels pretty good.
TK wants another ring this run to May. Thank you, TK. He's, of course, team principal at Arrow McLaren and the winner of the 2013 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
And Zach Veach, you do some sim work for Arrow McLaren, and I think if you look at the upheaval that they had and the uncertainty they had with one of their cars last year and the multiple drivers, I would say that even Zach Brown would have to agree that pulling the switch on Tony Kanaan was the right move because he's seemingly brought a tremendous amount of stability to that organization.
Oh man, I love Tony so much. He's not only an incredible driver, but he's a really good person as well. His insight. I mean, he's been doing this long enough now that he's seen the cycles of motorsports. Another Indy Next graduate, back in the day.
Yep.
So he's seen the evolution of motorsports, and he's still incredibly quick. I mean, if he had to get in the car, there's no doubt that he could be running for another Indy 500 ring himself. But, he loves racing, which is the most important thing. He obviously probably wants to be a driver forever, but you become so accustomed to this environment, the crew, and this becomes your home. It becomes your life. So when the day comes that we can't be driving anymore, we still want to be involved. We still want to be around it. Heck, I'm happy to be here doing the radio just because this race means so much to us that to be here in a meaningful way, you can never say no to that.
Well, the conversations that Tony Kanaan can have with those drivers, I know with all of the race teams that you were involved in, bottom line is this, your conversation with former drivers that are on the management side of that team and the overall side of that team, the conversations you have with drivers are different than what you have with the engineers and people like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one, because we all get it. There's no BS in another driver, at least, because we've all been there and
right.
you've seen it from your own eyes. And we do get to experience things that it's easy for us to communicate with each other because it's that sensation of the nuances that you get being in the race car. Just like today, we can all say and talk about how the nerves are and how nervous you feel qualifying, but it's always fun talking to another driver that's qualified for the Indy 500 because we talk about those 4 laps, and it's, you've all gone through it together. And, we've all had days where you come down to pit lane after those 4 laps, your feet are kind of jittering on the pedals, your heart rate is high, and you're just like, oh, man, what did I just do?
Talking about that technical alliance, going back to the work that the Myers-Shank has to do, their technical alliance with Ganassi, this is one of the ways where it's going to serve them well. I have seen being back in the paddock area when David Malukas had an issue last weekend, they were able to go to the Team Penske garage and get some assistance. So, let's face it, this is one of the many ways in which those technical alliances paid off because Ganassi's going to be able to offer them, parts and personnel that needed to get that car put back together if they can.
Absolutely. The most important thing now for him and his team is just going to be hands. And, with the amount of work that's got to get done, especially getting a backup car up to speed, it's just going to take a lot of people, and we don't have a whole lot of time to get that done. So if there's people that can do it, they obviously can. They're one of the best teams in the paddock. And, it's going to be a lot of work, but hopefully they can get back out today and just at least get one of those runs in to put them in a good spot.
Nice crowd starting to file in here, and it's a long day for all of us, but an enjoyable day for sure. The field will not be set with finality until we get to tomorrow when we have, last row qualifying, and we have the Fast Six, and that's always an exciting time. And, this the qualifying format, Zach, over the last few years, has taken on, different forms and different functions. But I know people would still like to maybe tweak it a little bit. But I think it's pretty cool when it boils down to the fact that you don't know who's going to sit on the pole for the Indy 500 until the very last qualifier, the very last day.
Yeah, I do like that. And that's, we were kind of talking before we got here, and I wanted to verify what the order was like. But yeah, I think it's all about the show. We're qualifying a week before the race. A lot of people, this is one of their favorite events, just the qualifying, because they know the energy that goes into it. So I think these guys are really going to get to enjoy it. For race fans, to them, the ones that come here, and it's all about speed, that's what this weekend is.
Let's get an update on the situation involving Kyle Larson from Great York.
Yeah, Kyle Larson, of course, who suffered that crash yesterday in turn number 3, preparing to get in that Aero McLaren HendrickCars.com number 17. And just a really cool note that I noticed walking past his pit box just a few moments ago. Of course, a couple of months ago, we lost John Edwards, who was a PR director, long time with Hendrick Motorsports, had a heavy role in that, even came to Indianapolis last year with Kyle. We sadly lost John just a few months ago, and a huge loss not only to the NASCAR community but as well to INDYCAR, and his time spent here was very impactful at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Kyle just placing 2 John Edwards Memorial decals on his 17 as he prepares to qualify for his second Indy 500.
Kyle Larson will be the 19th qualifier in line. Elio Castroneves 20th. Some potentially fast cars late in the draw, Zach. We got Takuma Sato 21st, Ed Carpenter 22nd, Alex Palou 25th, Scott McLaughlin 27th, Kyle Kirkwood 30th, and Joseph Newgarden drew the 33rd pill. Some of the first out, which I think they're very happy about this. Erickson Award, Robert Schwartzman, who was fast late yesterday, Rossi, Hunter Ray, Jack Harvey, Lundgaard, and Graham Rahal among the first 10 qualifiers.
Yeah, that's tough. And for people that don't know, qualifying for the Indy 500 is special because we draw an order to go out and make your first qualifying attempt. Fortunately, we have a lot of people draw for us because as a driver, you don't want to go up and pick your own coin because, you don't want to be responsible for, one of those 33 positions. But you want to get out as early as you can with conditions today because the lower that track temp is, like we were talking about earlier, the faster you're going to be able to go, just the easier qualifying attempt you're going to have. So the wind, I think, is going to be consistent throughout the day. So the big thing they're going to be battling is that track temp. So if you're in the first 10 cars to go out, you're sitting in a pretty good place.
Qualifying gets underway in earnest at 11 o'clock Eastern, and because of the fact there's a couple of hour window there, about 90 minutes or so, they're going to give this group 8 more minutes, and then the second group will get 20 minutes. So that's good news for those who still want to go out and turn laps.
Yeah, perfect. And that's nice because, like we said earlier, yesterday wasn't the best day for these guys. So getting that last attempt in to really know where the car is, it's really going to be beneficial for some of these guys that aren't quite happy. But again, we can also see the other side of that coin where the slightest mistake can really set the entire team back, as it did for Marcus, unfortunately. So you got to get out here, get your run in, get it clean, but also take care of the car, because nothing comes from practice.
In case you weren't with us throughout the course of the week and didn't hear us talking about this, and you're just joining us and saying, hey, wait a minute, that's not Davey Hamilton. Well, he is down on the pit box, and he is calling the race strategy for Jack Harvey. And we were able to get a couple of members of our family to come back and join us over the next couple of weekends. We're thrilled to death to have Zach Veach with us for qualifying this weekend. And then next Friday for Carb Day and Race Day Sunday, we will welcome back Anders Krohn, two more than capable driver analysts who've done great work for us in the past. And Zach, we're just thrilled to death to have you guys back with us.
Oh, it's fun to be back. I know we got to do so much together back in my Indy Next days, especially one of my favorite memories we were talking about earlier was when I won Watkins Glen, sprinted to the booth and covered in champagne, and then called the IndyCar race with you. So it's been a tremendous opportunity to work with IndyCar Radio. I know my first few races was with Paul Page, and I remember I was super nervous at Toronto. That was one of the first races that I actually broadcasted with you guys. And the one thing he told me that will stick with me the rest of my life is, we're not on air, we're not on the radio, don't think about it like that. We're just two guys having a conversation about racing. And he couldn't have been more true about that.
That's kind of where that started, because I think the first time we ever talked, I was walking through the paddock in Baltimore when you were driving in Indy Next, and I walked over and talked to you. We were just kind of standing there hanging out, and we visited for a little bit. And I was so impressed with your analytical mind and the way you described what was happening and what you expected to happen. I think I told you at that time, I said, hey, we ought to have you in the booth sometime. And after that, I mean, and oddly enough, that's the first place we ever had Anders Krohn in a broadcast.
Oh, really?
So Baltimore was very beneficial to the radio network for sure.
Yeah, that place was hard on race cars, but great for relationships.
Yeah. David Malukas continues to set the fast lap at 232.037. Rossi, Erickson, Harvey. Jack Harvey at 231.001. Simpson, Siegel through 6. Nolan Siegel at 230 plus. Hunter Ray Hall, Armstrong, and Scott Dixon have all turned laps. We were cautioned for quite a while, 21 minutes in fact, after hard contact by Marcus Armstrong. He needed some assistance to get out of the cockpit of his race car, but he was waving to the fans of the suites in turn 2. Our Rich Nye is standing by at the infield care center to find out an update on Marcus Armstrong. Mike Shanks said he can assess the driver. They know there's a lot of work to do with the car. They've got plenty to do, but they expect to, if everything goes well, that they need to go well, be out later this afternoon. 4.5-minute mark in this first session. And while certainly there's nothing quite like driving in an Indianapolis 500, drivers also say there's nothing quite like the pressure of putting together 4 good laps. And really, to a certain extent, Zach, it's almost 5 good laps. And we'll talk more about the mindset when you get ready to go qualifying here after we hear from a former winner and a legendary motorsports name.
Yes, everybody knows him everywhere he goes, especially here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Glad to be joined by 1969 winner Mario Andretti. And let's talk about Marco first. Of course, you've pretty much been on the pit stand watching and supporting Marco since his rookie year back here in 06. How's everything going over the 98 camp?
Well, it's going on okay. I think he feels pretty comfortable with the car, so that's important. And we'll see what happens qualifying. He's sort of pretty much mid to the end of the field to qualify. So I don't know, he's practicing now, but conditions will change pretty much by the time he goes out. Anyway, but I think he's in the mix pretty good.
I think to Indianapolis 500 qualifying, and I think sketchy, but looking back to your day, it was probably even more sketchy. You had the Roadsters, and then you had the first rear engine cars, and then you drove some of the really high downforce cars. Which one of those cars was the hardest to qualify here at the Speedway?
All of them. Never easy. No matter what you're driving, it's never easy. No, it's just that to get the maximum out of the car under conditions, that's the whole thing. And it's always unpredictable, and you got to be ready for it.
I know you're a racer at heart, and you look at the guys of today. I mean, these cars are almost out of control all the time. We just saw what happened to Marcus. Is there a part of you that wishes you could qualify and see just how sketchy the modern-day IndyCar is here at the Speedway?
Well, nothing different. I mean, you used to have it. It's about taking the car to the limit and sometimes you go over it, you know. I mean, we've seen crashes before. We see them today, we'll see them eventually, unfortunately. That's part of it, and you're just trying to do 110%, you know, and, well, let's say 100% rather than 101.
Good talking to you, Mario, and best of luck this month of May with Marco.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, legend Mario Andretti.
There's a lot of things, as I've said before, that separate you guys from guys like us, and I mean, just the response to that incident. I mean, it's a part of the sport, you know.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's just another day, right? You said it before. You're gonna have good days. You're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have days that hurt a little more than the others. But the thing I love that what Mario said is, you know, out of all the cars he's driven, the hardest one to qualify here was all of them.
Yeah.
Because it's never easy, you know.
So now we were going to talk about that. I mean, I've said, you know, obviously 4 really good laps, but is the out lap and getting yourself set up almost as important as those 4?
Absolutely. I mean, the tough thing about it is all week you're trying to get the car in a good window. So when I say that, you're making adjustments on the car, trying to get a setup that's as fast as can be. And the one thing we're always talking about around here is what we call scrub. So as the car goes through the corner, we're trying to limit the speed that it loses from the drag of the tires, well, the drag of the air and the scrub of the tires on the racetrack. So we're always trying to get the car around these 4 corners as efficiently as possible without losing any speed. So once you get the car there, you get a good setup that you're happy with your scrub numbers, it then just becomes down to execution. That's the most important thing, because there's so many things that have to go into a really good qualifying attempt, whether it's, you know, multiple gear shifts, reading the wind. As a driver, you're looking at the windsock every time you're going down the front and back straightaways. There's just a mountain of things that you have to do perfect. And you get one thing wrong, and it's not the ultimate qualifying lap. So even if you touch the rev limiter 1 split second, you now lost, you know, a quarter or half of a mile an hour.
And it doesn't take long to figure it out. I mean, I know that certainly you have plenty of data at the ready once you start doing the debrief, but I'm assuming that once you gain the level of experience that you gained, you know exactly where you lost speed on a lap.
Yeah, and the tough thing about it is when you do lose it, you know you're not going to get it back.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you make a small mistake on that first lap, you know the next 3 are not going to be optimal, but you have to finish them, especially if it's your first qualifying attempt. So part of a driver is when you do make that mistake, if you do make a mistake, you have to kind of be able to compartmentalize that to keep the focus at the task at hand of just finishing your run to try to salvage it as best you can.
That first group that was able to go out has seen the checkered fly now. There was about 8 minutes remaining in their session after that incident involving Marcus Armstrong. And so the clock has already started for Group 2. So let's give you the rundown. Felix Rosenquist went out late. He turned 5 laps with a speed of 234.176, so the fastest. Colton Herta continues to have speed at 232.892. Scott Dixon, 232.858. David Malukas at 232.037. Alexander Rossi, 5th fastest at 231.974. Marcus Ericsson at 231.919. Kiffin Simpson, 231.130. Jack Harvey at 231.001. Connor Daly, 230.973. Nolan Siegel at 230.568. Ryan Hunter-Ray, 229.924. And Graham Rahal at 228.753. Marcus Armstrong turned a couple of laps and only got up to 218 before that contact with the outside retaining wall. Again, happy to report that despite heavy contact, he appeared to be able to help the safety crew extricate him from the car. He kind of placed himself on the gurney, was waving to the fans, and where you have our Rich Nye stationed at the Infield Care Center, and hope to get an update very, very soon. And a combined total of 7,500 wins out turning laps on the track right now between Elio Castroneves and Takuma Sato.
Yeah, well, Castroneves is definitely carrying a few of them, right? It was so cool to see him.
It'd be 6 wins, I guess. Yeah, it'd be 6 wins. I don't want to give Sato one, although he
there could be a chance, right? You know, no attack, no chance. I know that's his motto. He's definitely trying for that 3rd ring here, you know, come next weekend. But it was so cool to see Elio get into that 4-time winners club because it's such a rare place to be. And heck, you know, he could be the first 5-time winner. That's why he keeps coming back.
He's carrying the kind of confidence right now and through the week of this practice that he was carrying that year.
Yeah, well, he's been somebody that's always been so fun to watch, even for me. You know, I know you guys have got to see really the rise of Elio at the start. I kind of started to follow him and learn about him when I was in karting, and you kind of always pick a driver you want to be like, and definitely he was on that list. You think about the history him and Tony Kanaan have as well, both coming from the same place is always special. Those two have had a lifelong friendship and a lifelong career together, so I'm sure it's a little tough for Tony watching Elio still racing, knowing that he's out there driving for another win, but you know, we're always competitive with our friends we grew up racing with. It's the same for me and my group as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. And, you know, Nick Yeoman and I have discussed it. Of course, Nick anchors the Indy Next by Firestone. And, you know, every year, as the years go by, you start to look at our driver roster. And there's more and more drivers coming up. I think, you know, that number is up to 20, or if not more than that. Nick threw the number out the other day, and I don't have it off the top of my head because I'm old and forgetful. But, I mean, a number of these drivers are very familiar names to us, having watched them come up through the feeder system, if you will, and Indy Next. And we always marvel and wonder at, okay, well, who's going to take their place? But, boy, we've got Dennis Hauger and Lockie Hughes and Miles Rowe, and, you know, there's Kyle Collette, and the next generation, I think, appears to be in good hands.
There's always another one in line. You know, that's one thing I've loved about Indy Next. They've always done such a good job preparing us for IndyCar, and you know, that's where a large portion of our friend group came from. You know, I was texting Felix Rosenquist before this practice session today saying I was going to be on the radio and I was going to be sure to say some terrible things about him because, you know, Felix and I, we were teammates in Indy Next with Bilardi Auto Sport back in the day. And, you know, another one of my really good friends, Gabby Chavez, I got to race with him in the Indianapolis 500 a few times. But him and I was rivals in Indy Next. So that Indy Next level of racing is where your hopes of becoming a professional race car driver really crystallize. We kind of like to call that college ball level of racing. You know, I was 18 years old going 200 miles an hour in an Indy Next car. And that's when you really start getting a feel for it of, you know what, I might have what it takes to get there.
You threw out Bilardi, and I got to say, in all the years that I've done this, I got to know Brian pretty well because he was a high school football coach, as I was at the time, and we used to stand on the back of his hauler and talk offense and defense and things of that nature and have a lot of discussions about football in addition to racing. But, you know, if you look for the relatively brief amount of time that he was involved in motorsports, the guy had a lot of success as an owner.
Absolutely. And, you know, the thing about Brian Bilardi, too, a lot of us never would have got our shot if it wasn't for him. You know, Brian was king of taking chances on guys and giving them an opportunity. He did it with Gabby. He did it with myself. Did it with Felix Rosenquist. He had a way of giving us an opportunity if we quite didn't have the sponsorship at hand to be running at that level, as long as he believed that you could win. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to win, I think, 4 or 5 Indy Next races with his team, and I was really sad to see him close the door because they have a long history for sure.
Kiffin Simpson, 9th fastest on the day at 231.130 miles per hour.
Yeah, really good result so far for Kiffin Simpson with this backup car. Before we get to the car, how's the body feeling this morning after that hard hit in turn 4?
Yeah, surprisingly, just all praise to God. I'm feeling pretty good, you know. I mean, we saw Armstrong had a big one there as well, so I'm just hoping he's doing all right. Because that looked pretty big, and I know from yesterday it's not so much fun. So, yeah, just hoping he's all right. And, yeah, right now I'm feeling pretty good, so we now just move on to qualifying.
This is the car you had in the April test, and you showed a lot of speed back in the April test in traffic and qualifying sims. Do you kind of reuse some of that same notebook you had in April, or with conditions today, do you kind of have to come up with something different?
No, conditions today are actually quite similar to that April test, so it helps out a lot to kind of look back at that notebook, see what we liked, what we didn't like, and try to make the car as good as we can for qualifying.
Kyle Larson, another second-year driver just like you, crashed in the April test. He said, I'm kind of relieved it's out of the way, the first big hit at Indy. Is that kind of how you feel? Obviously, you don't want to see it happen, but do you feel kind of relieved that it's just now out of the way and you can focus full forward on qualifying in the race?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you race here someday, you'll probably have a big hit, you know? So it's kind of just a matter of time. And yesterday was our day, and, well, my day. And now we try to focus forward to the Indy 500 and try to make make it as good of an Indy 500 as we can.
Good news for Kiffin Simpson, as you heard him talk about. That backup car, almost just as fast as the primary, and they'll continue to work on it here before we get into Saturday of qualifying.
12 minutes remaining in the session. Rosenquist, Pillow, Newgarden, Herta, and Dixon your top 5. Power, Malukas, Rossi, Erickson, and Sato the top 10. Rosenquist speed at 234.176. And Zach, we've got a pretty good in-car camera view of the car of Will Power, I believe. And I'm marveling at the steering wheel. I'm thinking there's everything on there, including a button which you can automatically order something on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, if it's not, that should be coming because that could be helpful. I know Power, I think, is always joking about how many Amazon Prime boxes are showing up in his house because of his wife, Liz. So I'm sure that that's not a request there. But, you know, I love this driver eye view. They have a camera inside the helmet now, so you can really see it kind of from the driver's perspective. And I was kind of chuckling to myself here watching because one of the things, you don't realize what you start to miss when you're not in the race or when you're in the car. And it's little things that subconsciously you never paid attention to, which is very strange. Like, I can see, you know, the car going into turn 3 and turn 4 in the short chute there, and the sun is at your back there. So there's always this shadow that comes across the steering wheel and across your hands, and it's the roll hoop because the sun's behind the race car. So that's something that I was just looking at, and you kind of miss the little things of, you know, you're flying around this racetrack, and the shadows in the car are always kind of moving across the steering wheel and the dash in there, and it's little things you miss.
So now when we talk about tools in the car, I'm assuming that you rely on those tools and deploy them much more on a road and street circuit than you would here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, or is that not the case, or are you just as busy here?
I would say yes and no. You know, on the road and street courses, when you deploy the tools, you have a little more freedom with them because you're not worried about those tools biting you. So you can make big adjustments, big swings. Because on the road and street courses, if the car kind of surprises you and it gets loose, it's not going to be a catastrophic event like we saw happen with Marcus here. But on the speedways, your tools are your best friend. You're using them as much as you can because, especially in a qualifying attempt, because believe it or not, your tires are actually wearing every corner. So the car is slightly getting slower these 4 laps every time you're steering into one of these corners. So you're trying to maintain the setup. You're trying to maintain the speed by adjusting your anti-roll bars and especially your weight jacker. And for those of you that don't know what a weight jacker is, we have basically a compression sleeve on the right rear spring of our race car. So we can hit a button on our steering wheel that ends up kind of compressing that spring and moving weight across the front of the car. It looks like we have some debris. That's a helmet hose on the track right now.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah,
that's come off, and it's laying in the middle of the backstretch, so that's a yellow flag.
So that's interesting, too, because we found before when we originally got the aero screen and we started putting these helmet hoses on, if you could get your helmet hose a little loose in the car, you might go just a touch faster.
Wow.
So I'm wondering if that's what happened there, or that was just a poorly secured hose that ended up on the racetrack.
As I've always said, you know, I tell my students sometimes when they get ready to take a test in another class, I said, remember, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yeah, well, you know, racing's about those gray areas, right? So.
Well, you got to be careful of those gray areas, too, because as Davey and I have talked about, the technical director is Kevin Blanche. If anybody knows how to do something that you're not supposed to do, it's Kevin Blanche. That's probably why he has that.
Hey, I don't have a dog in this fight this weekend.
Let's hear from Scott Dixon, 5th fastest in this morning session at 232.858.
Yeah, you just talked about it, 5th currently in the session. Is it safe to say you're happy so far this morning?
It was okay. The session was definitely a bit of a mess. You know, just hoping Marcus is okay. It was a pretty big hit there. Just as we were starting our green flag lap, that's when that crash happened. And then second run, you know, the 60 car came out in front of us. So we didn't really achieve a whole lot. Obviously, with condensed sessions, it's kind of hard to find the right spot out there. So a bit chaotic, but obviously some of our teammates had some pretty good runs there, so we'd be able to look at it.
You were good in the heat yesterday, and you were good when conditions cooled off. Is it safe to say that the PNC 9 car is going to be good no matter what the weather throws at you?
I hope so. You know, you never really know. We'll try and do our best. You know, I think we're in a much better space than we were last year, so keep our head down and keep working, man.
Scott Dixon, of course, always a threat for the pole here at the 500, a 6-time pole winner in his own right.
14th at the qualifying line, and that helmet hose came off of Kyle Larson's car, and because of that, he'll get a hold in the pit box.
Yeah, it just looks like it kind of broke seal there, and Just, oh, it looks like that. We had another car hit it, so.
Might have been one of the Prema cars.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. So
it,
luckily those hoses are pretty soft, so nothing to worry about there, but definitely a good idea to get it off the racetrack because these race cars are so close to the ground that if you get something wedged between the bottom skid and the track itself, you can really lose control just because it unloads the tires that you got.
Give you the full field rundown now. There'll be a little over 8 minutes to go in this session. It'll be Rosenquist, Palou, 1-2, 234, 176. Palou at 233.502. Newgarden, Herta, Dixon the top 5. Power, Malukas, Rossi, Erickson, and Sato in the top 10. Sato speed 231.857. Kiffin Simpson, 11th fastest at 231.130. Marco Andretti at 231.099. Jack Harvey at 231.001. Connor Daly, 230.973. Siegel at 235.68. Elio Castro Neves in the 229 range, along with Ryan Hunter-Ray, Kyle Larson, and Jacob Abel. Graham Rahal at 228.7. Marcus Armstrong involved in an incident, heavy damage to the car. He's continuing to get a look-see at the infield care center. Our Rich Nye standing by for the update, while Drake York is on his way to the 66th garage to assess that situation. And Kyle Kirkwood went out and turned a couple of laps, but not really at speed, just to shake down. Here's the qualifying order when you join us at 11 o'clock Eastern. It'll be Marcus Erickson rolling off first. Paddle Award, Kiffin Simpson, Robert Schwartzman, and Alexander Rossi, 1 through 5. 6th is Hunter Ray. 7th, Jack Harvey. 8th, Christian Lundgaard. 9th, Marcus Armstrong. 10th, Graham Rahal. 11th, Nolan Siegel. 12th is Connor Daly. 13th, Felix Rosenquist. 14th is Scott Dixon. 15th, Colton Herta. David Malukas, 16th. 17th, Santino Ferrucci. Will Power is 18th. Kyle Larson is 19th. Elio Castro Neves, 20th. Takuma Sato is 21st. 22nd is Ed Carpenter. 23rd, Marco Andretti. Jacob Abel, 24th. 25th, Alex Palou. 26th, Louis Foster. 27th, Scott McLaughlin. 28th, Stingray Robb. 29th, Christian Rasmussen. 30th, Kyle Kirkwood. 31st, Devlin DeFrancesco. 32nd, Callum Ilott. 33rd, Joseph Newgarden. And 34th will be Raiders VK. So the mindset, Zach, you always hear you want to go out early. And we'll get an update from Drake in just a moment, but want to get this observation from you real quick, Zach. What's the difference, how much better, and why is it better for the top 5 rather than the final 5?
Well, you want to be in that top 5 just because the track temp's going to be lower. You know, as we start qualifying here later today, with each minute that passes, that track temperature is going to be getting higher and higher from the sun as it really starts to get out and get strong with the UV. So those first 5, they really do have a little bit of an advantage just because you're getting prime conditions. I'm not saying that the last 5 don't really have a shot. It's just, it's a little harder and a little greasier. So those last 5 that are going to be in line, the car might just be moving around on the racetrack a little bit more, and that adds to that scrub that you're trying to avoid to put an ultimate lap in.
An update from Drake York.
Well, I just spoke to some team members down in the Meyer-Shank 66 pit of Marcus Armstrong. Of course, if you're just joining us, had that scary crash down in turn number 1. They are currently taking apart the primary car and readying the backup car, and Zach can kind of explain this a little bit better, I'm sure, but it's not like NASCAR or some other series where they just roll one out of the trailer and it's ready to go. There's a lot of assembly work that requires to go on that backup tub, but work has already begun on getting all the parts they think they can reuse off the primary car and onto the backup as that tub gets readied.
Yeah, that's very tough. I'm sure some of the listeners that have been IndyCar fans for a very long time remember the days in the 90s and that you had two cars ready to go at all time. You had your T car, your backup car ready to go. Well, unfortunately, you know, as we've kind of controlled the cost on some things, those days are no longer with us. We have spare tubs that we use for the backup cars. So up in the trailer, there will be another chassis, essentially a tub where the driver is sitting that's ready to go. But there's a lot of assembly that has to happen. So right now what they're doing is trying to figure out what's usable from that car in the crash. Hopefully the engine is not damaged, but you know that was a pretty hard rearward impact. So they're just taking off pieces right now and trying to see what they can put onto the backup car. But the tough thing about today is you use a practice engine all week, and now you put in your qualifying engine. So this was a brand new, fresh engine to really go out here and get the most of it. If that engine is damaged, you only got about 4 laps on it. Now it's got to go back to the factory.
Everything has been picked up from the backstretch, and we're back to green. We'll have 9 minutes, 51 seconds remaining in this session for group number 2. And for some of these teams, don't know that this is necessarily the case here, but I know in talking to some of the team principals last week, team managers and whatnot, they were going to spend some time, actually, they had their speedway car, and they were going to spend some time, Zach, kind of readying their cars for Detroit, because all in all, it's a pretty quick turnaround time. And, boy, when you run into a situation like this and you might need that car, that's going to continue to put this team behind the 8 ball. It's going to make some long nights for the guys and gals before they head off to Detroit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that's tough, too, one more thing to mention on the backup car, the reason you hate going to it is, your primary car for the Indy 500 is a race car that you've been massaging for the last 6 months.
Great point.
It's been at the shop. They've been trying to get the body fit on it perfect. Every seam that could be catching air, they've kind of smoothed out and just really made a bullet just for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So when something happens to that car and you unfortunately have to switch to the car that you've been racing, say at Long Beach and at Barber, it's not that it's not going to be a competitive car. That's not the case, but it's not going to be as fast as that car that's been specifically worked on just for the Indy 500. So it's such a big setback when you got to go to that car, because you know that you've lost your golden opportunity. So now you're just trying to salvage the race weekend.
So to give you an idea of what this day will be like once we get started at 11 a.m. Eastern, positions 1 through 30 will qualify, with positions 13 through 30 essentially being set. The IndyCar Series drivers and teams will attempt to qualify today. Top 12 qualifying, the final order of positions 7 through 12, the Firestone Fast 6 for positions 1 through 6, and last chance qualifying positions 31 through 33 will be determined late in the day tomorrow on Sunday. Now today, once every car in the qualifying order for today has been presented at least one chance to qualify, teams may choose from 2 lanes for second and subsequent attempts. Cars in the priority lane must withdraw their qualified time if the car has one, but priority access to the track ahead of lane 2. Lane 2 is for cars that have already qualified but wish to improve their position. I think the gamesmanship will come later today. Just outside of the top 12, Zach, if you're 13th or 14th or 15th, and think you can find a 10th or a 1,000th in some cases, and then, of course, doing all that they can maybe to get themselves in row 8, 9, or 10 and avoid that last row shootout.
Yeah, it's tough because it all depends on where you're at and where you kind of expect it to be. And I say that because some guys, some teams are showing up and they might not have put as much focus on qualifying as they know. They know they have a quick car enough to be in the race, so they've spent the time just working on the race car. So they might be shooting for that middle of the grid spot. But it's tough, like you said, when you're at that 12th or 13th place and you know that you have just enough to kind of squeak forward, maybe you didn't get the most perfect run, and you know you can improve on it, I think that's when you're going to see those guys going out there to give it another go.
Is that strictly a driver's decision, or is it more of a decision involving everyone, team managers, strategists?
It's more so everyone and the resources that you have, right? If you're doing it as a one-off, you're coming here, this is your one race of the year, your main focus is doing well on race day.
Yeah.
You get the car to a place that you know it's going to qualify well, you're going to be in the show, so you're not stressed about being in that last row shootout, but you're trying to give as much running and as much focus as you can to having a really good car on race day.
Can we go back to the Infield Care Center and maybe get an update from Rich Nye?
Gentlemen, Dr. Julia Vizier came out and gave an update to the television crew here. We did not get that update, and she was taken back into the medical center. So it appears, though, at this point that Marcus Armstrong is not going to come out here. We don't know his status, but I'll try to get that in just a moment.
Thank you, Rich. So we'll continue to keep you posted on the information as we have it, with 5 minutes and 20 seconds remaining in this session. And to go back and recap, once we saw him out of the car, it was clear that he was he had his bell rung pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. When you get out of these things and you look a little disoriented or you feel like that, it's usually a sign that you have hit your head pretty hard. These guys, IndyCar, they're the best in the business of making sure that we're safe and they take care of us unlike any others. So if that is the case, they're probably going to be running through that concussion protocol.
Let's go back to Rich Nye.
Okay, so the update from back here at the medical center on Marcus Armstrong is that the doctors here are just being very thorough in their examination. We saw after their accident, obviously, that it took some time to get Marcus out of the car, and now they're also being very thorough. So the doctor says that Marcus Armstrong is awake and alert, but he is at the medical center here in the infield, the IU Health Emergency Medical Center, and just a very thorough examination to make sure that he is A-OK, but he is awake and alert, and the examination continues back here at the Emergency Medical Center.
It's not talked about a lot, but that's probably one of the most significant buildings on this massive facility, and it is full of people that are the absolute best at what they do.
Well, they take care of you so well there. You know, it's always a tough place to be. You never want to be in the infield care center, especially at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But, you know, we've all been there. I think it might have been Kip and Simpson that said it. You know, there's those who have crashed at Indianapolis, and there are those that are going to. So it's all part of the process here. But when you do have that unfortunate day that you end up being, you know, carted off to there, these guys, they really make you feel like, you know, you got the best care that you could be receiving.
3.5-minute mark of this session before we go qualifying a little bit later on today at 11 o'clock. Alex Palou is second quick. Joseph Dugarten is third fastest. Christian Rasmussen is 11th quick. He's out turning laps now at 231.827. Jacob Abel finding some speed. He's in the 20th position, and he's out turning laps now, just dropped to 21st. He's at 229.251. Graham Rahal, 22nd fastest at 228.753. So again, just about 2 minutes remaining in this session. And what's the debrief going to be like for these teams and drivers?
Really, hopefully it's minimal, right? If you went out here and you had a really good attempt, if you did choose to go out and practice, hopefully it's very simple as saying, hey, I'm really happy with the race car. It's doing what I'd like it to do. We just need to figure out what level of downforce we're going to qualify with, because that's the guess at this point. Just trying to take in conditions and trying to figure out that first qualifying attempt you make, what wing angle are you going to go out there and run at? Because that's really what makes the difference now. It's all about drag. So you're trying to get all the way down to that magic -7 mark where you're all trimmed out, where you can't take any more rear wing out of the car. But I don't know if we're going to be able to get down there with the amount of wind we're expecting.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? A couple of drivers referenced that as you well know, having done testing, because of the weather conditions, as much as anything, it doesn't always translate. But it sounds to me like that those that may have tested well here, when they did test, feel like that they're going to be able to put a fair amount of that setup on the race car.
Yeah, well, the thing we always talk about, there's two ways to look at the race car. There's mechanical grip, which is the grip that you put onto the racetrack through settings that you change on the car through like dampers and springs and things like that. And then you have your aero grip, which is coming from the wing. So realistically, you're always trying to build the best mechanical race car that you can, because mechanical grip's free grip. You're always going to be using that to go faster. And then the easy thing to kind of maintain is just what level of downforce that you're going to be selecting for the conditions that you have at hand.
Another update from Rich Nye.
Well, just showing up here at the Infield Medical Center was Marcus Armstrong's teammate, Felix Rosenquist, who is worth noting as quickest in this morning session. So that team obviously has speed, but Felix very concerned about his teammate. Just came back here on a scooter and was asking for the update, got the same update that we got, that Marcus is awake and alert, but a more thorough examination is continuing inside the Emergency Medical Center, and now Felix is inside visiting with his teammate.
And that's not a big surprise. As you mentioned, he's been a teammate of yours, and he's one of the most likable people in the planet.
Man, yeah, Felix, there's few people that are better than he is. You know, I had the honor of going all the way to Sweden for his wedding last year, and, you know, to take an international flight to go to one of your friends' weddings, it says how highly you rate them as a person. So I'm not surprised that he's there checking on him, because he's such a team player. he actually cares about the people that he's around, not just drivers, but his mechanics, the crew, everyone involved.
Well, if you look to your left, you'll see that tub over there on the table with chocolate chip cookies. Those are made by Alex Wolf's mom. And last year during our media day, Felix Rosenquist became a big fan of Alex Wolf's mom's chocolate chip.
Oh, so you're saying I'm going to have to run some down to hold my end of the bargain?
Or you're going to have to find out what it is he loves so much about him, because we all know for sure. But the checkered flag is out on the session. And again, your qualifying order, the top 10 looks like this: Marcus Ericsson, Pato Award, Kiffin Simpson, Robert Schwartzman, and Alexander Rossi. Ryan Hunter-Ray, Jack Harvey, Christian Lundgaard, Marcus Armstrong, and Graham Rahal, the top 10. Other notables: Connor Daly, 12th, Rosenquist, 13th, Scott Dixon, 14th, Colton Herta and David Malukas, 15th and 16th. Ferrucci, 17th. Will Power will go off 18th. Kyle Larson, 19th. Elio, 20th. Sato, 21st. Ed Carpenter, 22nd. Alex Below, your 25th qualifier. Scott McLaughlin, 27th, and line been fast all week. Kyle Kirkwood, in the 27 machine, is 30th. And Joseph Newgarden rolls off 33rd, and the final car in line for the first attempt will be the 18 of Renus VK. Join us at 11 o'clock Eastern for complete coverage. Again, fastest in the practice session this morning, 234.176 miles per hour, Felix Rosenquist. I'm Mark Jane. So long for now for the world's greatest race course, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.